It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, folks, another review of what's happening in the country today. We have my guest today, U.S. Congressman Lou Barletta from the 11th United States Congressional District, talking about some of the issues that we're all facing today. And as usual, Lou just calls it the way it is. Congressman, thanks for coming on the show.
Sam, good to be home and be with you today.
A lot of things have happened, so not that these other shows are more important than my show, of course, but this week with George Stephanopoulos, I saw you on with that. How did that show come about? And you shared some personal things that happened with some of the guests. And I'd like our viewers to know just exactly, you know, looking at you, maybe they thought you were coming on as the enemy, okay? How did that thing come about?
Well, I was this week, ABC reached out to have me on as a guest on a number of topics, and one of the topics that we were going to talk about was immigration, and that's how the invitation came about. And they had some very good guests on the panel, and it was interesting when I got there. Jorge Ramos, who's with Univision, was one of the guests there. And when we first got there, we got into the green room, and I was introducing myself and saying hello to the other panelists. Jorge came up and shook my hand, and he said playfully, "You and I are going to disagree today." I said, "Well, don't be so sure." And so we went out, and we went out on the set, and as George was getting ready to cut to the panel, he had asked me, Stephanopoulos had asked me if we had any kind of any Latino population in my hometown, which I was surprised that he was surprised to know that I said over 47% of our city is Latino. And I turned to Jorge, who was sitting next to me. I said, "Jorge, you didn't know that, did you?" And I said, "But you know, I got a good percentage of the vote there. So even the people at home understand, you know, what I'm saying when I talk about the problem, because it's really the immigrants who are hurt the most by illegal immigration, but nobody ever talks about that." And so it was interesting. It caught him a little off guard, and we went to the first commercial break. You know, I turned to him and I said, "Jorge, you didn't know my grandson is Dominican. You didn't know that, did you?" And
did his mouth drop? Or
yeah, he was really surprised.
Yeah.
And by the third break, you know, I turned to him and I said, "Jorge, do you really believe that it's helpful to the Latino immigrants who are here in America, who came to America for an opportunity, for a better job, to earn more money, to give a better life for their children? Do you really believe that it's helpful to invite millions of people into the United States to compete, to come illegally and compete for their jobs? That's not the opportunity that America promised, is it? Shouldn't we give them the opportunity they asked for?" And after the show was over, he came back up to me and he said, "You know, you and I should sit down and talk some more." Mm-hmm. I said, "Well, you see, your first opinion really isn't always the best, the opinion that matters, Jorge. You know, we should sit down and talk." Okay,
so for the sake of our viewers, when you talk about illegal immigration and you talk about Lou Barletta, and you've been, you know, the forehead of this for many years, some people will think that, like Jorge thinks, that you do not like, you know, Hispanics, or you don't want any of these people in the country. To make it plain and simple for people who are watching, and I play this show in the Harrisburg area as well, just so you're in your district, what is the concern, what is the problem, and what is your solution, okay, that you would like to see if you had, you know, your way?
Well, the first thing, Sam, that people may not realize, and I can tell you certainly those in Washington do not realize this, but they're beginning to get the point, because I've been loud and clear with the message. First of all, nearly half of the people that are in the country illegally didn't cross the southern border. They didn't come from Mexico. as some would, in the media would like you to believe that that's where all the illegal immigrants come from. Over 40% of the people that are in the country illegally came here on a visa. The visa expires and they simply disappear. They don't go home, and we have no way of tracking them. We have no way of knowing who's coming in and out of the country. The situation in Boston is one example why it's important for us to know who's coming into the country and when they're leaving the country. But nearly half of the people that are here illegally came here on a legal visa. Visa expires and they don't go home. The point that I've been making that sometimes gets lost in the story is that the people, as I just explained, the people who are hurt the most, I am probably one of the loudest supporters for the immigrants here in America, because America provides opportunity. That's what we invite people to the United States, to come here, become an American citizen, and have an opportunity to better your life. We are pulling the rug out from underneath the immigrants who are here by inviting millions of people to come here illegally, and we know for a fact that that competition for work makes people, does one of two things. It either makes people work for less money, or they lose their job completely. There are 22 million Americans who couldn't find work this morning when they got up. I don't think it's good for the immigrants or for the American people who can't find work or who are looking for a better job to invite millions of people to come here illegally and then offer them a pathway to citizenship. Anytime you attach a pathway to citizenship to any proposal, you can guarantee that millions more will rush to the United States. I've said that in Washington. I've had a hearing. I'm on Homeland Security, Border Security is my committee. The head of Border Security has actually testified that exactly what I said is beginning to happen. They are seeing a large number of increasing people crossing the border illegally because Congress is promising amnesty, which gives a green light to millions of people all over the country, all over the world, to come here. So, what the message that I've been giving is that we should be doing one thing in Washington right now: securing our borders. We shouldn't be talking about any kind of amnesty or anything else that will encourage people to come to the United States, but rather, our immigration laws were set in place for two reasons: to protect American jobs and to protect American national security. The proposals they're offering violates both of those principles. It invites more people here illegally and allows them to stay and take jobs away from others. And two, we have no idea who's coming in and out of our country, and our national security is at risk.
So what is your solution?
The solution is we should be securing our borders. And when I say securing our borders, that's not only the southern border and the northern border. That is the fact that anyone that comes to the United States on a visa, we need to know when the visa expires and where you are and when you enter and exit the country. Any state that has an international airport is a border state by the simple fact that you can come here legally and then never go home and then stay here. You can get a new identity. We know that for a fact, that people use fraudulent documentation, which makes it impossible to look at the history of that person back in their country of origin. So when you hear, well, we're going to do background checks on everyone, I met with the Secretary of Homeland Security and asked the question, are we going to do face-to-face interviews with over 11 million people? And the answer is, of course, no. Are we going to be able to go back to the country that many of the people came from and do criminal background checks to make sure that there's not ties to any kind of terrorist groups or drug dealers or any kind of criminal activity? How will we know the history of all 11 million? Now, that's not to say that all 11 million or more are bad, but it is to say, as we saw in Boston, it only takes two to take a major United States city and paralyze it and affect our economy. So, we have good reason to make sure, and that's why our immigration laws, we want people to come in through the legal process so that we can check the backgrounds of individuals. And it's also not fair to the millions of people who are waiting to come to the United States to obey our laws, to say it's okay for someone else to jump the fence, get here, and then reward them with American citizenship. On top of that, Sam, we simply can't afford it. The Heritage Foundation completed a study that said if we go through with what the Gang of Eight in the Senate wants to do, giving amnesty, it will cost the American taxpayers $2.6 trillion after taxes are paid by those that are here illegally. Programs such as Medicare, Social Security, unemployment compensation, food stamps, welfare programs, programs that are already going broke. We know Medicare is going broke, Social Security is going broke. This proposal will simply speed up the bankruptcy of these programs that are needed.
Knowing what you just said, the Gang of Eight, there's Republicans and Democrats on there. McCain is on that committee. I would think that they would have the same information that you have. When we come back after the break, why then, if they have this information you're talking about, do they want to pursue that? Folks, I'm talking to U.S. Congressman Lou Barletta. We come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the illegal immigration and what do we do with them and some other issues. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us, folks, and thank you so much for all of you who are viewing. As I said, sometimes we play this show in the Harrisburg market area. Appreciate that. And all our friends in Kingston, Wilkes-Barre, Mountaintop, and Schuylkill County. My email is sam@ssptv.com. Please feel free to give me a comment, and also go to our website. For those new viewers, we have many shows that we produce. If you go to our website at ssptv.com, hit shows, you'll see all the shows we produce. One of the most upcoming shows doing tremendous is The Girls, a great show along with All Around the Towns and many other shows. My guest today is Congressman Lou Barletta, no stranger to anyone, national TV, and we talked about when you were on This Week. But okay, now you've been fighting this for years, even when you were the mayor of Hazleton. Now we have the this Gang of Eight, they say. We have Republicans and Democrats. Now what you just said, the money, the cost, I'm sure Senator McCain has this information. I'm sure Schumer has this information. Why is it then, if they know this, what you know, why are they pushing this?
Sam, I really believe that the reason is politics. In fact, some of them of the Gang of Eight have even openly talked about it, that after the last election, many feel in Washington that to try to get Hispanic support, that they need to get the immigration issue off the table. Sam, politics is not reason to make public policy that will affect our country for decades and decades to come. That should not be the reason to make public policy. Public policy should be always made for what is in the national best interest of the American people. It is not in the national best interest when there are 22 million Americans who are out of work to encourage more to come. It's not in our national best interest when there are people around the world that want to kill us, to allow people to come in where we can't monitor who it is. So it is for that political reason that these proposals are happening. Have you had the opportunity of speaking to Senator Rubio or Senator McCain or any of these senators, knowing that where you stand in the Congress, in the House? I had not, Sam, but I have sent a letter. There's a Gang of Eight in the House as well. They've been meeting in secret, and I'm expecting a bill to come out from that Gang of Eight as well very soon, probably when we get back to Washington. I have sent a letter making sure they know that I am unhappy with the way this has been going, that they've been meeting in secret, that I have sent a letter to the Speaker Boehner and to my Republican leadership asking that any bill that comes out from this Gang of Eight in the House goes to the committees of jurisdiction, all the committees of jurisdiction. I sit on one of them, Homeland Security. I want to make sure that the American people have an opportunity to see what's in this bill, to give us an opportunity to ask questions so that we don't try to rush a bill before the American people have an opportunity to see what impact it will have. We don't want something like Obamacare where Congress is telling the American people, well, we passed it, that now you're going to find out what's in it. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about what this bill will do that I don't believe is true.
Well, you have that with Obamacare, and unfortunately we have, it was said that this was going to be a difficult thing. Excuse me. Now, from what I understand and hear, some of the Democrats who were supporting Obamacare are running away from it as they begin to see how the effects are. And probably the young people in their 20s, people in their 20s and 30s, will probably be paying the price for Obamacare with their. But you see, people don't realize that until you hit the wall. You know, it's like a parent, do this, and then when they do it, oh, Daddy, I didn't mean, and now I understand what you mean. And unfortunately, that's what we have. You're fighting a very difficult battle in the country today, Lou, because you're one of the few. You're fighting a very liberal press. Okay, they're not good, and I'm surprised. Like MSNBC had you on. I'm surprised that ABC brought you on to present your case. I guess they had to do something, or maybe they thought they'd get you in a corner. Okay, and I guess they were a little surprised when they didn't get you.
I've been doing this for a while, you know, and I told the speaker that. I said, listen, I stood up while I was mayor of my hometown back in Pennsylvania when nobody in Washington had the courage to stand up and say what millions of people were seeing around the country. You know, when your population grows by 50%, as ours did in Hazleton, and your tax revenue stays the same, you know, you realize we have some kind of problem here. And again, Sam, we have to remember this. This is a bill. Anytime you're trying to talk about illegal immigration, the people you are hurting the most are the immigrants and the people who can least afford to lose their jobs. You come to America for a better education for your children. Shouldn't we give it to you? Shouldn't we give you that opportunity to get a job? Shouldn't we let the immigrants get a chance to get to begin to make a better life? The millions of Americans who have lost their jobs, or our children who are coming out of college, shouldn't we give them an opportunity to find work? Do we really need millions of more people to come to the United States at a time when so many people are losing their jobs, losing their homes, and the economy is hurting?
In politics today, you know, when you talk about entitlements, and this is just my opinion, maybe not necessarily yours, when you looked at the last election, when Romney and Obama were running, you saw the entitlement people come out in groves. You saw the Hispanic people come out in groves. You saw all of the minorities that he said he was going to do things for. And if I'm giving you things for nothing, and you said on one of the news broadcasts that there's so much fraud going on in Washington, that's pathetic. Now, you know, that sort of like gets you nervous, because here's you're talking about lawmakers who are making the laws in our country, and there's so much fraud going on. I mean, this is like very disturbing.
And who's hurt? People that need those programs. The people who can least afford to be cut off or to have these programs go bankrupt are the ones who are being hurt by it. And, you know, it's just not an honest conversation when we're talking about the fact that America should continue to welcome immigrants into the country, but we should make sure that we enforce the rule of law and not reward people. 1986, Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 1.5 million illegal aliens. Promised the American people that this would never happen again, that we were going to secure the borders. Well, it turned out to be 3 million people, because as soon as you promised amnesty, obviously people said, why wait? Let's go to the United States, and once we're there, we're safe. We should keep Ronald Reagan's promise. We should secure the borders first. You don't replace your carpet at home, Sam, when you still have a hole in your roof. It's that simple. We should just focus on border security, make sure that we're protecting the American people and protecting American jobs.
Do you think you're going to have enough support in the House? Because, again, elections are coming in. The Democrats are zeroing in South Carolina. They're really hammering, you know, the opponent down there. Pelosi is spending millions to get rid of the I forget the name of the person who they just want the House back. Okay, we're seeing in the country today, all the disasters that are happening. And unfortunately, 80% of the press is holding it down. They're not exposing that. God forbid it would have been Bush. It would have been every day. But we're looking at terrible situations, and you know, now they're applauding over 9% unemployment. That's just a great thing. You have energy costs that are still out of control. I Googled the top 5 problems that faces the country. Number one of them was the decline of the traditional family. Number 2, decline of literacy and education. Number 3, decline of morality in the media. Okay, individual fiscal responsibility, and you can begin to see this develop. Sitting where you sit, Lou, and when I come back, a short break, I want to talk about your Transportation Infrastructure Committee a little bit, but I think people want to know, what's he doing? You know, people say, yesterday I said you were coming on the show. What's he doing? Is he doing anything, Sammy? Because, you know, you're only one person, and I don't think people understand the process. What's Barletta doing?
Well, Sam, just today I got an award from National Manufacturers for my 100% voting record for manufacturing. My record has proven that my votes are geared toward bringing jobs and keeping jobs, because that's what's going to get this country back again. It's not the government giving programs away and giving more money out. It's moms and pops all over the country, entrepreneurs who have a dream, and from that dream, that's where innovation happens. You know, it's from, you know, I was an entrepreneur. We started a little company and it grew and grew. That's what's going to save this country. It's not government, you know, making people dependent on the government. And I see that in Washington. I see a government right now that wants the American people to depend on them rather than give them a hand so that they can depend on themselves. You know, the things you're talking about, the breakdown of the family, Sam, when that happens, you know, who ends up paying the cost? You know, the taxpayers end up, because people end up, you know, on programs because of the breakdown of the family.
Folks, I'm talking to Congressman Lou Barletta. I want to take a short break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show. Folks, my guest, Congressman Lou Barletta. Lou, you're on a Transportation Infrastructure Committee. What is that committee?
The committee is Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management. We have jurisdiction of my committee over every public building in the country. We've been able to save through shrinking the footprint of getting rid of federal buildings that we don't need and moving people, federal employees, into smaller spaces. On 18 new leases, Sam, we saved $350 million. There's a lot of waste in the federal government, and through my committee, I'm going to be able to cut a lot of it out.
When you first went into Congress, this is your 3rd year now.
Yes.
You're going to, when you first went into Congress, and you had, you know, you had certain things, because here again, what are they doing when they see nothing happening? Are you fighting a majority? Are you fighting all the time to try to bring your points?
It's an uphill battle, Sam. I'm going to be honest with you. You know, it's very frustrating. But I know I'm there on a mission. You know, it's not about a career, it's about a cause for me. So when you go to Washington with that thought that if it costs me my job to do the right thing for the American people, then so be it. Then I know I did my job. So I'm not swaying from what I believe. I'm not swaying from what I felt when I went to Washington. And now that I'm beginning my 2nd term, I have my feet firmly on the ground, and I'm not afraid to speak out or call anybody out when I see something that's wrong.
What do you think about term limits?
I absolutely think that we should have term limits. I think if we had term limits, Sam, people would go to Washington, get their job done, and know that they're not there for a career, that they're going to go back and let somebody else come in with fresh ideas. And you know, when you have people there who are there for 30 years and 40 years, you sort of, it's difficult to stay in touch with the people when you're in Washington and you see the way things are done and you believe that that's the way it's done at home, and that isn't the way private businesses do things. It's not the way you do things in your house, and sometimes there's a disconnect.
I have mixed emotions about it. We both have a very good friend who's been pushing term limits, as you know, and I think yes. But then here's what worries me. You know, if we put a person like you in Congress, whether you like or dislike it, but you're there with a purpose. Now what happens is you're starting to really get like Flood was, Dan Flood. Mm-hmm. You're starting to get really there, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, well, I said I only want to have 3 terms or 4 terms, and now you're gone. You bring someone in there who probably just has no experience. That's the only thing I'm concerned
Well,
about.
I'll tell you this, there's absolute truth to the fact that it takes a little while until you, and if you can't navigate or find ways to make things happen, you could waste some time or be there for some time until you can get things done. But I found out that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And,
yeah, I mentioned Congressman Cartwright, and I was very glad he came on the show. And I said to him, I said, you know, when flood was around, the northeastern Pennsylvania had jobs, they had this, they have that. Well, Biden comes in town, he's on the Democrats, Obama came in town, Clinton came in town, they all wanted our votes, they all came in, said how great we are, and yet we're losing a lot of jobs in Tobyhanna. Scranton's one of the highest, okay. Why don't we have that influence, okay, to protect your own district? I don't know. I mean,
well, there's no more earmarks.
Yeah.
Earmarks are done. So the members of Congress of the past could not navigate today as they did back then.
I see.
So the president won't sign them and Congress won't pass them.
Yeah.
So you can no longer have a congressman who's there for 30 years and has that kind of power that could earmark projects to that district.
All right, you got about 30 seconds. What do you think is going to happen in the country today?
Well, you know, we need to continue to look at jobs and make sure that we're protecting. I'm very worried, Sam, about our national security, whether it's cybersecurity, which we didn't talk about. It's the next biggest threat to American way of life here. There are lots of things happening, whether it's Syria, Egypt, around the world. That's very troubling. But we've got to get our financial house in order. We can't waste the taxpayers' money. We've got to find jobs and get Washington out of the way and get people back to work again. So I'm going to continue standing up for what I believe in, and hopefully I'll make the people back home proud.
Congressman, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I know, when you were mayor, you always came on the show, but there hasn't been a time when I've got in contact with you that you have not responded, maybe not to me, but you always responded to the people, not necessarily here, but to give us information. I wish you the best.
Thank you, Sam.
You're watching the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, SSPTV.com, Sam at SSPTV.com. We'll see you next time.